We didn't finish off this second to the last chapter of Ezra yesterday. We were getting real close, but time was getting away from us, and really we cut off about the last three verses of the book of Ezra, chapter 9. And we did that the day before, if you remember. We got a little, busy about 9:25 or so. So the last two verses, we just read them and then clicked off and didn't get. So we went back, and that's kind of what we're doing, is that we are covering, because we really only have another chapter after this. And as I was looking at the chapter, and if you're online and kind of looking at it, you can look at our screen and go along with it. We're not doing this live, when I said online, just for the people that are on the radio. But if you look at um, where we are, and then you look at the next chapter, we're going to see that there's a long list of names again. You get into verse 18, and the rest of the chapter is giving you names. So, we could even potentially finish this. Let's see what happens. Let's go back to the end of the 9th chapter. I'm going to click on the tab I made yesterday, and the paragraph starts at verse 10. It says, "Now," and this is the prayer of Ezra. Ezra is praying. Ezra is really broken. There's a brokenness in the life of Ezra as they get back into the land, and then they get a report that the Jewish people who had been there in the land already, many of them had defiled themselves. And we talked about the defilement yesterday. It's available if you want to listen to it. But just believe me, is that they had defiled themselves. Ezra's throwing a hissy fit. Ezra's out there saying, "What? You got..." Anyway, he prays to the Lord. This is a prayer. It's a prayer that, for me, has a lot of fear interjected in it. This guy here is saying, fire could come down from heaven at any time right now and torch us. The judgment of God could fall upon us. It's probably like he's taken out his life insurance policy to make sure that it's updated. He's looking to see if the door is open to his underground shelter, because he knows that at any minute that the wrath of God could fall upon them. And I guess that would all be a possibility, but it's an appeal to the mercy of God in the midst of it all. It's an appeal to God to say, "Hey, forgive us for our sin." He's not just saying forgive those dirty dogs for their sin. He's saying forgive us for our sins. And you look at the great prayers of the Bible, and many of them are people that are praying for situations just like this, that they really weren't part of the. You look at the prayer in Nehemiah. We're going to look at that here pretty soon, because that's the next book that we're going to get into. Look at many of these prayers, a prayer of Daniel, and you look at these and you say, "Well, why are you guys? Why is Daniel praying like this? Why is Nehemiah praying like this? Why is Ezra?" He wasn't the one who committed the act. Well, they see an association between the community, and when one part hurts, all the part hurts. That's what it says in the book of Corinthians. And that's kind of the outlook that he has there. "And now, our God, what shall we say after this?" Look at it. "For we have forsaken your commandments." So, well, Ezra seemed to be like a pretty nice guy, and it was the sons of Jeshua and these other ones who had really sinned. Why is he? Because he understands that they're a body, that they are one people, that they have been connected together, and what is connected to them together has been the covenant that God has made with them, and that really ties them together. "And now, O our God, what shall we say after this? for we have forsaken your commandments. You see that? You see how he's making this connection with the people as he connects himself with God. You know, we understand that Ezra was of the priestly class, but today we are all priests and kings, and we all make intercession, and we all stand in the gap. The sad thing about it, in one time, and I think it's one of the major prophets, that God says, I looked for a man to stand in the gap, and I could find none. Ezra was the one who was standing in the gap for the people, and understanding that as long as there was a gap, there was a separation, there was something that was missing in his life. There's something that was not complete in his life. There was a disconnect deep down within him when he found out that the sin was going on in the community, in the body. And again it says, and now, O our God, what shall we say after this? For we have forsaken your commandments, which you commanded by your servant the prophet, saying, the land which you are entering to possess is an unclean land, with uncleanness of the peoples of the land, with their abominations, which has filled it from one end to another with their impurity. You want to see the connection? The connection is going way back to the words of Moses. He says, which you commanded, okay? He says, you commanded by your servants, the prophets. Who was one of those prophets? Well, one of those prophets was Moses himself. And in verse 11, it says there, your servant, the prophet, saying, the land which you are entering to possess is an unclean land. That was what we call today the Holy Land. Yeah. And it was defiled. The land, this land did not belong to the Jews. This land did not belong to the Ite brothers, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Amalekites. This land belonged to God, and the Ite brothers had defiled it with their abominations. God's people, whom he had rescued from Egypt, were sent into the land and prepared for 40 years to enter in and to clean out the land, to clean it of the abominations. And they failed to do so. In fact, they just allowed the abominations probably to live a little bit more. Wrath came upon them. The wrath of God came upon them. They went into captivity for 70 years. Now they're back in the land. And what do they find? A little more of the same going on is what they find. They find that things haven't changed that much. And ain't that the way it is many times? Things haven't changed that much. But Ezra says, I'm going to be an agent of change, and I am going to pray. I am going to seek my God, and I am going to ask him for that mercy that is available to us all. We're going to get into a song, and then we'll get into a weather report.